I think that Colossians chapter 4, verses 2 through 5 or 6 are the greatest passages on this question. And he says, devote yourselves to prayer, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open up a door for the word. Quit trying to knock down the doors of your family members, because they're like Jericho. They're tightly shut up, and no one goes out and no one comes in. Only the Son of David can open up a door that no one can close. You need to spend more time praying for an open door instead of prodding or trying to manipulate or trick someone into talking about Jesus. And he says, so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ for which we have been in prison. He's praying for an open door. And then that I may make it clear in the way I ought to speak. So you're praying for an open door, and you're praying daily that when you get that opportunity, you will speak in a way that you ought to speak. And then conduct yourself with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. Now it's talking about your conduct. Let me give you an example. So if I sit down on a plane and I'm talking to somebody, just talking, and that's the way I start. I just talk to people because I even want to be a servant in the conversation. I don't want to be a bully in the conversation. And I also don't want to use some evangelical gimmick to try to trick them into talking about Jesus. So I talk to them and I'm praying. And sometimes an opportunity arises. And sometimes if I know like the plane's getting close to landing and no opportunity has arisen, then I'm going to do something I learned from John MacArthur. I'm just going to look at them and say, you know, I've had a wonderful conversation, but there's something very important to me and that I would like to ask you. Have you ever understood the gospel? And would you give me a few minutes to explain it? Just straight up. And I've had people say, well, yes. I remember one time coming back from Romania, actually. I fly from Bucharest, I think, to Amsterdam. I get on a plane, and I sit beside this really dignified-looking man, and start talking to him, and I said, have you ever understood the gospel? And he goes, you know what? I've been thinking about that lately. I mean, my family was religious, but he goes, you know what? We got like 5 or 6 hours. Could you just explain to me Christianity? And he was one of George Bush's aides. So, I mean, God opens up doors. But one of the things that I'd like to point out to you is I remember talking to a man, and it got towards the end, and I said, we had a great conversation. I said, you know, may I share what's so important to me? And he goes, well, what's that? And I said, just have you ever understood the gospel? And I mean, his face changed like stone. He said, no, I don't want to hear anything about your God or anything like that. When he said that, I said, okay. Now, you were telling me about your son. So how's he doing in college? And we just began talking. And I'll never forget, he got up. You know, the plane landed, and he got up to pull his bags off the thing, and I was getting ready to get up, and he was walking out, and he took like one step, and he turned around, looked at me, and he goes, I just want you to know I'm so sorry for being rude. Now, if I had pushed him, then he would have got off the plane, probably been in a bar with some of his work buddies there in the airport, and all he would have talked about is how some evangelical accosted him. But instead, it was like heaping, you know, hot coals on his head. And maybe it prepared his heart. So I trust in the power of God. You don't have to manipulate or prod. You do have to be available, and you need to try to have opportunities. But you got to entrust that to God. And that's so much more with your family. You can do so many college students get saved in college, and bless their heart, they go home and they're nominal Christian parents, and they walk in the door and say, I'm a Christian now, and by the way, your Christianity's false. You know, it's like, okay, how's that working for you? It's like, don't do that. Don't do that.